God bless the Young America's Foundation. Welcome to Washington, D.C. Welcome to the swamp. Tonight, I'm here to give you a word of encouragement, a word of hope going forward. I have two very simple points. Number one, America is in crisis. Look, we all know this. We have a president of the United States who shakes hands with the empty air. This is not normal. We have a president who talks to the Easter Bunny. And every single policy from this White House is a disaster. It's actually remarkable to get everything wrong. I mean, you think about it, if they rolled the dice, accidentally they'd get something right. If they threw darts at a wall, they might get something right. But every single thing they're doing is a train wreck. We've got inflation skyrocketing. Price of everything going up. Price of food going up, price of electricity going up, price of health care going up, price of gasoline through the roof. Heck, it's so bad, Antifa can't afford bricks. It's so bad, Eric Swalwell can't afford Chinese dinners. It is so bad. AOC can't afford fake handcuffs. We've got crime skyrocketing, murder rates up, carjacking rates up. We have chaos at our southern border. Over 3 million people have crossed illegally, the worst illegal immigration in 62 years. And as bad as the domestic policy and economic policy has been, the foreign policy is even worse. Every single region on earth is worse. Every enemy of America is stronger. And some of y'all may be thinking, Ted, you said you were going to encourage us. You really suck at this. But I told you I had 2 points. So here's the second one. Revival is coming. And I believe that with all my heart. Throughout the history of American politics, there's always been a natural pendulum sense. One party gets in power, they go too far one direction, the American people pull it back the other way. The other party gets in power, they go too far the other direction, the American people pull it back. That sounds good. A little bit of an echo. Didn't know we're at the Grand Canyon. More than once I've been giving a speech, my iPhone's in my pocket, and Siri goes, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm like, of course you don't. You're big tech. You suck. But all across this country, people's eyes are opening up. They see what's going on, and they recognize this doesn't make any sense. Look, you guys are all on college campuses. Your classmates, they know, even if they're scared to say it, they know that this is nuts. I don't know how many of y'all saw last week in the Senate Judiciary Committee, Professor Crazy Eyes. It's a Berkeley law professor who kept making reference to people with the capacity for pregnancy. The next senator to question after she said that was Josh Hawley. And Josh asked, I thought, a very reasonable question. 3 times you've used this phrase, people with the capacity for pregnancy. Do you mean women? and crazy eyes, her response was, "Your question is transphobic and an invitation to violence." And I got to commend Josh. He showed admirable restraint. I think I'd have lost it. And Josh just sort of smiled bemusedly, raised one eyebrow, and said, "Observing that women can get pregnant is an invitation to violence?" This stuff is nuts. By the way, when Ketanji Brown Jackson, when her nomination was before the court, reporters were going up to every Senate Republican on judiciary and asking a question. One ran up to me and said, "Senator, what is a woman?" I looked at the reporter and said, "An adult female human being?" And the reporter looked at me and said, "Wait a second. That's actually the dictionary definition. Did you look it up?" And I was like, "No, I just happen to speak English." I said, "By the way, if you would like a second definition, I can give you a second one. A Homo sapien with 2 X chromosomes. Take your pick. Either one of those works pretty well." We're living in the age of craziness. I was visiting recently with an undergraduate at one of these woke colleges who said, each class has to begin by introducing yourself, stating your name, and stating your pronouns. Well, I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronouns are kiss my ass. This is nonsense. And what I want to tell you is people all across the country are realizing it. Their eyes are opening up. They may be afraid to say it out loud. But I'm here to predict that in November, we're not just going to see a red wave. We're going to see a tsunami. We're going to see people turning out. Look, 5 years ago, in the Senate, there was one open socialist in the Senate. That was Bernie Sanders. All the other Senate Democrats, they'd say, no, we're not socialists. We're not with Bernie. He was kind of crazy Uncle Bernie out there on the left side. They said, no, that's not us. Today, Bernie Sanders is chairman of the Senate Budget Committee. And Biden's top priority remains passing Bernie Sanders' socialist budget. This is crazy town. And there are a whole bunch of folks. We're seeing young people moving right. We're seeing women moving right. We're seeing Hispanics moving right. We're seeing African Americans moving right. We're seeing working class voters, union households moving right. This is, I believe, a generational moment. So I can tell you right now I'm focused on 3 things. Number 1, I'm focused on standing up and leading the fight against every dumbass policy coming out of Biden and Harris and Schumer and Pelosi. And to use a military context, it is a target-rich environment. Right now, the Biden White House is in the process of redefining a recession. You know, some of us, Scott, you may remember growing up, we were always taught a recession was 2 consecutive quarters of contracting growth. Now they're saying, no, it's not 2 consecutive quarters. Never mind. These aren't the droids you're looking for. In fact, we're renaming 2 consecutive quarters of economic decline. We're now calling that a super successful economic boom. Number 2, Between now and Election Day, I'm going on the road nonstop, campaigning to retake the Senate and retake the House, doing rallies all over the country, working to energize and turn out the grassroots, and to elect strong conservatives. Because look, when we have a majority, then we got to do something with the majority. And one prediction I'll make is South Texas, I believe, is turning bright red in November. South Texas historically has been a Democrat stronghold for over a century. As you guys know, we just had a special election in South Texas in a district right along the Gulf of Mexico. From just south of Corpus Christi all the way down to Brownsville, the southern tip of Texas, right on the Mexican border. It's a district that hasn't elected a Republican since 1871. It's the second most Hispanic district in the entire United States, and in the special election for the first time in over a century, a Republican represents that district. And not just a Republican, an Hispanic woman, and the two districts next to it that are both held by Democrat incumbents. I believe we're going to win all three of those and elect 3 Republicans and 3 Hispanic women for the entire Rio Grande Valley. I can't wait to see Nancy Pelosi and AOC trying to explain to these 3 Hispanic women on the southern border how illegal immigration is really just fine and dandy. There's no problem whatsoever. It's powerful what's happening. And the third thing I'm focused on doing is working to try to win people's hearts and minds. And that's something I want to encourage each of you to do. Every one of you has a platform. You have a voice. And I want to encourage you, you shouldn't have to feel like, well, I need to be 30, I need to be 40, I need to be 50, I need to be working, I need to be doing this and that. You have a voice right now. And you have a voice especially with your peers. You have a voice with your friends and classmates. Use that voice. As many of you all know, every week I do a podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz. We launched it 2.5 years ago. Within weeks, it became the #1 ranked podcast in the world. If you all have your cell phones, I want to encourage you, take out your cell phone and text the word verdict to the number 24005. Let me give you that number again. The number is 24005. Text the word verdict. What you'll get back is links to subscribe to the podcast. Every week, what we try to do is engage in the issues, explain what's really going on, cut through the fake news, drill down to substance. And YAF has sponsored Verdict going on the road to college campuses. We've gone all across the country. The tour is continuing. If you want us to come, Michael Knowles and me to come do the podcast from your college campus, go to YAF's website and nominate your school. Make the pitch why we should go. And by the way, we do a mix of bright red conservative bastions, places like Texas A&M, University of Alabama, but we also do some very blue schools like University of Wisconsin at Madison and Yale. Although I'll tell you something, Yale, it was very interesting. We probably had 600-700 students there. It's a packed room, kind of like this. And I'd say a half to a two-thirds of the students, a third to a half of the students there were left of center. It was right after Ketanji Brown Jackson was confirmed, and when I mentioned it during the podcast, about a third to a half of the room cheered. And my reaction, I said, look, I'm thrilled. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of a conversation. Thank you for listening. I didn't know if we'd get protesters. I didn't know if we'd get people screaming and yelling and throwing a fit. We didn't afterwards. I had drinks with an Orthodox rabbi who works on the campus, who said that that was the biggest group of Yale students he had seen have a civil, constructive conversation about conservative ideas, he said, in 20 years. Your classmates are hungry. And so I encourage you, use your voice, use humor. Tell stories. Look, this White House, by the way, comedy's disappeared. You have something like Saturday Night Live, they can't make jokes anymore. They're so politically correct that there's a great opportunity for humor. Look, Joe Biden flew to Saudi Arabia to bring down gas prices, and he brought back COVID. And you know, one of the effects of COVID is it reduces your ability to smell. And so the incidence of hair sniffing has gone way down at the White House. Like, just laugh, just have fun. I want to encourage all of you, be happy warriors. Particularly, the left is so shrill, they're so angry. How many radical leftists does it take to screw in a light bulb? That's not funny! You know, I said that once in a group. A guy in the back of the room called out, said, well, how many does it take? And I responded, nobody knows, because that would require work. But just laugh. There's a meme online. It's a picture of me. And underneath the legend, "This man ate my son." I saw it. I retweeted it. I said, he was delicious. And you know, just this week, the New York Times ran a story about how cannibalism is coming back. So who knew? The left, there's a reason they're angry. What they're selling doesn't work. What they're selling is nonsense. That gives us an opportunity. And they're also tyrannical, totalitarian prigs. They want to govern everything about you. They want to govern what you say. They want to govern how you worship. They want to govern what you believe. They want to govern whether you defend yourself and how you defend yourself. They want to govern everything about you and demand that you comply with their orthodoxy. We have a much simpler message, which is freedom. You decide what you want to believe. You decide how you want to worship. You decide what you want to say. And if you say something that's wrong, the answer isn't to silence you. It's to explain why it's wrong. Freedom is addictive. It's enticing. Look, during COVID, we saw numbskull politicians shutting everything down. Shutting small businesses down, shutting restaurants down, shutting bars down, shutting gyms down, shutting churches down, shutting schools down. In California, they filled up a skate park with sand. Like, talk about no fun here. And by the way, you want to talk about opening people's eyes? The ridiculousness of COVID rules and mask rules. All right, how many of y'all remember when there were mask mandates in place? What were the rules for going to a restaurant? You walked in, you must wear a mask until you sit down. When you sit down, you take your mask off, and everyone is fine and safe. Why? Because of science. Now, I actually have a theory, which is that the COVID virus reacts to altitude. At 6 feet in the height, it is deadly. It will kill you the instant you walk in the room. At 3 feet, it is harmless, and it's actually a good health tonic. By the way, that explains why Fauci's safe. He's only 5 feet tall. But everyone knew this was crap. Like, at the time, the tyrants putting it in place, they knew it was crap. Which means we have an opportunity to be a happy evangelist for liberty. All right, let me close with this. In January, I look forward to walking along a hallway in the United States Capitol and bumping into a little man carrying a screwdriver, coming to change the sign on Nancy Pelosi's door. And Nancy is going to get on her broom. No, okay, that's not right. Nancy is going to get on her private jet, the USS Broom, and she's going to fly back to California. And Scott, for her sake, I really hope that her husband doesn't pick her up at the airport. And then Chuck Schumer is going to get in the Acela and head back on to Manhattan. And then we're going to tell Joe Biden it's 2025, and he'll just wander back to Delaware. We're on the cusp of something amazing. And I got to say, y'all are lucky to be young at a time when so many people's eyes are opening up to liberty. You're lucky to be taking part in saving this country. That's a battle worth fighting. And I'm really proud to be fighting it alongside you. Thank you. All right, now I'm happy to answer or dodge any question you like. So we've got a microphone there.
All right, NCSC, please stand up behind our intern standing back there. That's where the line will start. Once you ask your question, please state your name, the college you go to, and a brief question. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Garrett Everett. I'm currently interning for Congressman Tim Burchett from Tennessee O2. I go to the University of Tennessee. My question is, with the Senate set to vote on a big chip bill this week, how do you keep these major corporations from going to the communist China regime without contributing to massive inflation by spending $54 billion?
Yeah, look, it's a great problem. It's a great question and a real problem we have. And there are a couple of components there to break it down. Number one, when it comes to China, I think China poses the single most significant geopolitical threat facing the United States for the next 100 years. And I think we need a comprehensive strategy to take on China, much like we had to take on the Soviet Union and win the Cold War. I think we are in a comparable situation. I can tell you in the Senate, I've introduced over a dozen different pieces of legislation taking on China's deception, their murders, their tortures, their corporate espionage, their theft of intellectual property, their cover-up of COVID, and also focusing on the supply chain in particular. China has targeted our supply chain. We all saw the vulnerability of it in the midst of COVID, when, to the astonishment of a lot of people, Americans realized just how many of our pharmaceuticals are manufactured in China, and a major Chinese state-owned newspaper threatened to cut off life-saving pharmaceuticals as a tool of economic warfare against the United States. And that, at that point, it crosses over from economic warfare to real warfare if you're taking away medicines that people need to continue to stay alive. When it comes to chips, semiconductors, a real vulnerability of our economy is how much we are dependent on semiconductors that are manufactured abroad and how little of that is here. And in particular, an enormous amount of the most complex semiconductors are built in Taiwan. And if China carries out an amphibious assault on Taiwan and takes it over, that puts us at a real vulnerability for defense, for technology, for our economy. So I am enthusiastically in support of common sense steps to bring manufacturing back to the United States, to bring semiconductor manufacturing back to the United States. That being said, I don't like the bill that the Senate has on the floor right now, and I'm a no on it. And the reason is that it's $52 billion of straight-out corporate welfare. It is the federal government writing massive checks to giant multinational corporations. It's not the federal government's money, it's the taxpayers' money. I am all for tax incentives to encourage the creation of new factories and new jobs here in the United States. And I think we can use the tax code creatively to make it more attractive to build semiconductors and to engage in manufacturing at home. But I think anytime you have the federal government writing direct checks to companies, you invite cronyism, you invite corruption, you invite abuse. And so I think this is the wrong approach to solving a problem that is a very important problem and needs to be solved.
Thank you, Senator.
Howdy, Senator. I'm right over here.
Oh, all right.
Howdy, my name is Benjamin Schrader. I'm from the University of Texas, San Antonio.
Excellent.
And I just wanted to ask you an easy question. Being one of your constituents, what's your favorite thing about being the senator from Texas?
Oh, now that's an awesome question. Look, Texas is a state where the central ethos is freedom. You know, you look at our state, and our state was founded by a bunch of wildcatters with fourth grade educations that began drilling holes in the ground and became one after the other the richest men on earth. I think Texas is the most entrepreneurial place on the planet. The ethos of Texas is give me a horse and a gun and an open plain and I can conquer the world. And so what I love about Texas is that love of freedom. You know, when my dad came from Cuba to Texas in 1957, he came with nothing. And Texas is a state where we're built by people who risked everything and came here. You know, you think about people who are on the rugged frontier of the United States. States like Tennessee, our last questioner from Tennessee. And they decide, you know, the frontier isn't hard enough, we're moving, and they would stick on their door a sign with the words GTT, gone to Texas. And I got to say, it is an amazing thing to represent a state that has a love of freedom. So I'm wearing a pair of black boots. These are Lucchese boots. They're Nile crocodile. The front of them has the Senate seal. And the back, to give you a sense of the spirit of Texas, the town in South Texas, town of Gonzales, little town. Texas was, at the time, mid-1800s, early 1800s, was part of Mexico. And the dictator of Mexico, General Santa Anna, issued an order to the Texians, that's what they were called at the time, was Texians, to hand over their guns and hand over the cannon that guarded the city. And the Texians responded by making a flag with a picture of the cannon and the very simple words, "Come and take it." And that flag, the Gonzales battle flag, was the beginning of the Texas Revolution. Now, a lot of people don't know the end of the story, that actually Santa Anna did come and take it. He marched in with an army and seized the cannon. And then in battle after battle, General Sam Houston, defending the Texians, lost battle after battle. The Alamo, just about everyone dies. It was very much like the American Revolution, when we lost almost every battle until the final victory at San Jacinto, where Sam Houston defeated the Mexican army and we became an independent nation, the Republic of Texas, for 9 years. So the back of my boots is the Gonzales battle flag. That's an amazing thing, to know that my bosses are 30 million Texans across the state, and to fight for their freedom and their jobs and their safety and their rights and their security. That is very cool.
We love you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Howdy, my name is Joseph Church from Texas A&M. Now, this is a tough question, but what do you think the Astros should do at the trade deadline?
Ooh. You know, picking up some pitching help always helps.
Of course.
Listen, I'm an optimist, so I believe this year the Stros are going all the way, but I believe every year the Stros are going all the way.
Me too.
I will tell you, so I'm not sure what they should do at the trade deadline, but I will tell you a fun story. So, Astros have been in the ACLS 5 years in a row. They've been in 3 out of the last 5 World Series. And a tradition that started, so 2017, when we started this incredible run, I went to games 3, 4, and 5 of the World Series. Game 3, I took my dad, which is totally cool to go with your dad to a World Series game. Game 4, I went with Heidi, which she's not really into baseball, so that was less than ideal. And then Game 5, I invited my eldest daughter, Caroline, to come. Now, I love Caroline. She is spirited. She is fiery. She is an awful lot like her father. And so Caroline said, well, I'll go, but if I go, I'm going to root for the Dodgers. Heidi's from California, and Caroline likes to be rebellious. And I said, sweetheart, you can root for anyone you want to, but I'll be damned if I'm going to take you if you're rooting for the Dodgers. And so our youngest daughter, Catherine, it was the day after she turned 8. Catherine looked up at me and said, Daddy, I'll root for the Astros. And I said, sold. So Catherine and I went. I only had 2 tickets, so I went with Catherine. If you remember, Game 5 of the 2017 World Series is one that went past 1 in the morning. And it was just Catherine and me. It was the 2 of us. We're dancing and yelling and screaming. And I told her afterwards, I said, look, you may not realize this right now, but you're going to tell your grandkids about this, because you have just gone to the greatest baseball game in the history of the Houston Astros. So it was an awesome time, and I will happily, and by the way, I cheer for every Texas team. If you represent Texas, you cheer for everyone, but I'm a Houstonian, so I cheer for Houston against everyone. So I hope this is the year, but we could always use more pitching. Last year with the Nats, or the Braves last year, we just didn't have the pitching guns to make it through. We had the bats, but we couldn't hold off their bats. So picking up another reliever or another potential starter would be an awfully good move.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Senator. My name's Charles. I'm from the University of Michigan. And I wanted to go back to what you talked about in your speech with this pendulum swing.
Yeah.
And I think you spoke for a lot of us when you said that the left has gone too far. But do you believe that there are examples of conservatives going a little too far the other way, or maybe there are times when we could have been a little more measured in our rhetoric?
Absolutely. And I think you actually put the word you ended it with is really important. Rhetoric. I think language matters, tone matters. I look at this country, and right now we are so divided, and we're so angry, and we're tribalized, and social media contributes to this, where the left gets its news from left-wing media, the right gets its news from right-wing media. If someone disagrees with you, you unfriend them. So we don't talk to each other. If you turn on TV at night, if you watch Sean Hannity and Rachel Maddow, It's not even that the issues aren't even the same. It's not like they have different takes on the same problem. They're parallel universes. And I think we will move beyond that. But I think our rhetoric, you know, for me, my political hero was always Ronald Reagan. And I was 10 when Reagan became president. I was 18 when he left the White House. And, you know, much like for the World War II generation, many of them would refer to FDR as our president. I'll go to my grave with Ronald Wilson Reagan defining what it means to be president of the United States. And there was a generation of Republicans from a prior generation, from the Nixon era. I've never been a big Nixon fan. That there's a generation of Republicans that just seem like mean, greedy old men who are yelling, "Get off my lawn!" And one of the amazing them talk, you hear the echoes of appealing to our better angels, of lifting us up, of finding our shared values and how we come together. A lot of Republicans have a really lousy habit of being wobbly on substance. They're willing to give in and vote for terrible stuff over and over and over again, and they combine that with being jerks on rhetoric. And they think, well, if I'm mean, that's a substitute for being conservative. And I think being winsome is much more powerful. You know, Reagan never beat his chest and said, "I'm the most conservative guy who ever lived." Reagan said, look, I believe simple common sense principles that every small town, every small business, that families have known for millennia. I think that's powerful. And so, yes, we need to guard against overheated rhetoric because it drives people away. It doesn't persuade them. And it inflames the divisions in our society. And I think instead we need to appeal with substance and truth.
Thank you.
Hi, Senator. First, thank you for being here, by the way. My name is Parker Boggs. I'm from James Madison University in Virginia. I wanted to go back to what you said earlier. You were talking about now Congresswoman Maya Flores, who won her seat in South Texas. Mm-hmm. Not only is she a Latina woman, she is a young Latina woman.
Yes.
Obviously, you're looking at this crowd of 300 young people who really want to make a change in the world, including myself. Obviously, we live in a very divided political field right now. What advice do you give, especially people like myself and people in this room who want to run for office in this completely heated field that really do desire to make a change for America?
So it's a great question. What I'd say is get involved, and get involved now. Go get involved in a campaign. Go volunteer in a campaign. Go start knocking doors or making phone calls. Get involved in an issue, something you care about, something you're passionate about. You know, I knew from the time I was a little kid I wanted to run for office, which, by the way, is the wrong answer. So there is a right political answer. The answer is no, I never wanted to run for office, but the people just pulled me reluctantly, demanded that I do so. That may be the right answer, but it's complete nonsense for pretty much anyone who says it. For me, you know, I grew up as the son of an immigrant who was imprisoned and tortured in Cuba. And all I ever wanted to do was defend freedom from when I was a little kid. But my family we didn't come from money. They were not politically connected. We didn't know those worlds. And so as I thought about it and analyzed, okay, how do you do this? It struck me that there were three things you needed. And I thought of it almost like three cords in a rope. You needed skills and substantive accomplishment. You needed something that you've done and an actual skill set that you could credibly stand in front of voters and say, hey, there's a reason to think I could do this job. You needed relationships with the grassroots, relationships with conservative leaders, relationships all around. And then number three, you needed money. You needed the money. Running for office is expensive, and sometimes you have people who say, I want to run, but they have no idea how to raise the money, and it usually doesn't work. You've got to have some path to be able to raise enough money that people can hear what you have to say. And so I analyzed each of my decisions from the perspective of how does it enhance one of those threads of the skill set I needed. And I actually thought, when I was your age, I thought I was going to go make a bunch of money, start a company, become a gazillionaire, and then run for office after I was a gazillionaire. That was a great plan. I kind of envisioned myself like Tony Stark. As life would have it, I kept having opportunities that strengthened the skill set side and strengthened the relationship side, but didn't do a whole lot on the money side. So, I mean, I had student loans until about 12 years ago. I mean, I was paying off my loans every month. But what I would say in terms of skills and substance, pick an issue and build a real record. Like for me, school choice is an issue I'm deeply passionate about. I've worked fighting for school choice for 30 years, and I just got involved. I got involved with the Federalist Society, where I chaired their school choice and education reform group and hosted a national conference on school choice. Did lots of things that were not directly political, but they were an issue I cared about, because what that lets you do, if and when you do choose to run, is you, rather than tell people what you're going to do, you can show them. You can say, look, this is where my heart is and where I poured my energy into. And I would say more broadly, some of y'all may choose to run for office, others may not. What I would encourage all of you to do, take the time to engage in introspection. Take the time to assess, what are your passions? And everyone's passions are different. Ask yourself, when you go to bed at night, what's the last thing on your mind? When you wake up in the morning, what's the very first thing you think about? If you do what you love, you're going to be better at it, and you're going to have a lot more fun. So, hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you.
We've got time for one more question.
Thank you, Senator. I'm Hunter Oswald. I'm from Grove City College. My question is, you talk a lot about this optimistic future of Republicans are going to win in the midterms, it's going to be a red tsunami, but there's really not much, it seems, to be a policy focus. What is going to be after the victory? So do you think this is an opportunity for conservatives to establish a second contract with America that not only emphasizes the policies, but say constitutional changes like term limits and a balanced budget amendment?
So I do. I think the way you win is to run on ideas. And there's a divide. So not everyone in the Senate believes that. Not everyone in the House believes that. There are leaders in both houses in the Republican Party who believe that taking a stand is risky. And one of the things to understand about politics, I suspect pretty much everyone here is frustrated when our Republican leaders don't actually do what they said they would do. I know I'm frustrated. I suspect everyone here is. You got to understand why that happens. There's an old saying that politics is Hollywood for ugly people. It's pretty much the only profession where a short, fat, bald guy can walk into a room and everything they say is insightful and witty and wise, and people are kissing their behinds. And it becomes part of their identities, where people will look in the mirror and they'll puff out their chest and they'll say, I am a senator. Hot diggity damn, I am important. And it becomes something they're addicted to, and so they live their lives terrified of losing it. And what will happen when you're sitting in the conference room and a big issue, an important issue comes up, is people will say, well, if we do something big and bold on that, that will entail risk. And if there's risk, some people won't like it. If some people won't like it, they might vote me out of office. And they vote me out of office, I don't know who I am. I'm a big believer, and so we'll have these arguments. I mentioned before, when we win the majority, we need to do something with it. We'll have these arguments next year, because I promise you Republican leadership will say internally, no, don't do anything risky, we're winning, just shut up and we'll keep winning. I think the way you win elections is by following Reagan's admonition of painting in bold colors and not pale pastels. You know, you think about it, so there's a whole species of Republican consultants in Washington. and many of them are knuckleheads. And the way they view it, they think of the political spectrum from here to here. And if your opponent is here, their thinking is to be infinitesimally to the right of them, so that you capture every marginal voter right up until that point. And there's some intuitive logic to it. It's not a crazy thing on the face of it, but it's fundamentally wrong. And the reason is, if you do that, you eliminate any reason anyone has to vote for you. And think back to the Reagan election in 1980. Ronald Reagan didn't say, I am exactly like Jimmy Carter in every respect, except imperceptibly slightly to the right. No, what he did is he drew a line in the sand. And he said, this is a choice about who we are as a nation and what we believe. And I think that's how you win elections. You know, when I first got to the Senate, I was elected in 2012, got here in 2013. One of the biggest fights I ever had with my colleagues, and we had a lot of pretty rocky fights when I got here, concerned the debt ceiling. And we're in a lunch meeting of all the Republican senators, and Republican leadership stood up and said, okay, I want to ask everyone here, we got a plan, which is all of us should unanimously consent to lower the threshold to raising the debt ceiling from 60 votes to 50 votes. And leadership explained, here's why. It's actually a fabulous idea, they said, for two reasons. Number one, because then it will pass and we all want it to pass. And number two, if we do that, we can all vote no. And Harry Reid and the Democrats, there was a Democrat majority in the Senate, they'll have the votes to do it on their own, and we can all go back and tell our constituents, we voted no on the thing we're just about to consent to allow happen. And I was sitting there, and frankly, I thought they would come out and say, let's negotiate for something really piddly. I didn't think their starting position would be, let's just surrender and let them do it for nothing. And so I raised my hand. I said, look, I'm sorry, there's no universe in which I can consent to doing that. I traveled the state of Texas telling Texans, if you elect me, I will fight with every breath in my body. I will throw my body in front of a train to stop this out-of-control spending and debt that's bankrupting our country. There's nothing I've done in my entire time in the Senate that has infuriated my colleagues more than that. Shortly thereafter, the Wall Street Journal wrote an editorial called The Minority Maker. And when Republican leadership is mad at you, the Wall Street Journal hits you. It's one of the ways they try to discipline their members is they publicly flog them. So the Journal explained, Cruz will single-handedly ensure that Harry Reid remains majority leader in perpetuity. You know, in the Old Testament, when someone came forward as a prophet, you were told to test that prophet with a series of short-term predictions to see if they come true. Well, just a few months after that editorial, we had the election in 2014. We won 9 Senate seats. We retired Harry Reid as majority leader, and we won the biggest majority in the House of Representatives since 1928. You win, I believe, by drawing a line in the sand, by standing and fighting. And so I emphatically agree with you that we should lay out a clear vision. I'm a big fan of another contract for America. I put out a couple of different versions over different cycles. Not everyone in Congress agrees, but I think drawing a clear contrast is a way to win, and I would encourage you guys, look, running on substance, running on something, school choice, as I said, is a deep passion of mine. I think that is a powerful contrast with the left. And so I can't control what others do, but I can tell you, as for me, I'm going to focus on issues and substance and policy that make a difference in people's lives, because that's the whole point of politics in the first place. And I think that's definitely the path to winning. All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.